So let's go ahead and add some materials. So I'm going to drop a material library here, down below here. Visualize that, dive inside, and press tab and search for principled shader. Okay, so that's your standard kind of shader in Houdini. Well, for Karma and for Mantra as well, both render engines use the same. So I'm going to make 3. Let's do metal, let's do plastic, and let's do excuse me, background. Okay, so let's assign these first, and then we can see, well, let's give them some color. So metal, we could just if you go up to this cog here, we've got some defaults, so I'll just make an aluminium. Plastic, I think there's a plastic there, and background, I'll just leave it at the defaults for now. Go back out, and then to assign them, we do that here. Okay, so you got this assigned to geometry. You can do it in here, or there's a separate node which is assign materials, I think, but I think we can just do it in here. Yeah, but we'll do it in this node. So material VOP, we need to find that actual material. So in stage, in material library, let's find the background, and the geometry will be that background geometry, which if we go here, we'll find ground, and we just drag that across. There we go. You can see that changed a little there. Let's add another material. We'll use the let's get the metal, and the material path we don't need, but the geometry path, we need that group metal. So that's in ball metal, drag that across to geometry, and you can see that updated there. And then the last one for the plastic, and get the plastic, and the geometry will be the plastic. There we go. So that's you know, the materials are all connected correctly, and you can see the materials down here in our a scene graph tree. So to actually view the render, so this is still the viewport kind of you know, render just for visualization. If we come here to this and then go to Karma, now this will be actually rendered for us. There we go. So there, I feel like we can see, no, yeah, sorry, go back into the camera. I thought the you know, the background wasn't high enough there, but that's fine. So let's play around with these materials a bit. So for the background, I want to use kind of a pinky color. So something like that. So let me I'm just going to type in the values so that, you know, that we used previously. 0.5. Let's do, yeah, something like that. Okay, and then I'll use that same color. So we can right click and go to copy parameter for the plastic, paste values there. Okay, and now for the background, I want this to be a bit rougher, so you can see that it's kind of shiny. So I'm gonna push this up to 6, and the rest can be left as it is. For the plastic, we will leave it at default, I think. Well, not at default, you know, these settings were set when we set it to plastic. And then for the metal, I think that's pretty much fine as it is as well. Maybe, let's see, we'll make it a little less rough, a bit more shiny, so we get some reflections in there. So we're reflecting that actual light, the HDRI. You can see some colors from the sky and from the excuse me, from the ground as well. You see some greens and browns and blues in there, which is nice. So that's fine for the materials. So let's go back out here. Now for the actual render settings, you can either press D on your keyboard, and here now, because we're in the stage context, we get some different, we get this render tab, and we can change some options there. But a more comprehensive way of doing it is to drop the Karma node. Okay, drop that at the bottom. So let me just give myself some space now, drag these across. Okay, so you can see that's rendering out. what I'm going to do is let's take a look at setting the depth of field. So you got a couple of options. We're going to do it in the compositing stage and nuke later, but you can do it here. So just to show you, if you turn on depth of field, nothing will happen yet. Let me drop the samples down so it runs a bit quicker. Let's do like, I'm going to do it down to 1, which will render super quick, but obviously we'll have a lot of noise. There you go, that's done in 10 seconds, but obviously it's really noisy. But what we can do is turn on the, if we come into filters here, if you've got an NVIDIA card, you can use this denoiser. I don't, so I'm going to use this Intel OIDN denoiser. I'm going to turn that on, and then that'll render again for 10 seconds, and then it will apply the denoising kind of algorithm to that. So you can see that it does a good job, even we've got a load of noise there. So the more samples you can give, the better. So obviously, denoising, the best way to the way to get the best render is obviously to have lots and lots of samples, but that takes a long time. So it's kind of a compromise between samples and the denoising. So we'll leave it at this for now while we're setting up lights and so forth. But later we'll raise the samples a bit. So to get the depth of field working, we need to go into our camera, go to View, and I'm going to go into Sampling, and we need to change the focal distance. So we know that the balls are pretty much in the center of the scene. They're at 0. So I can look at the distance of my camera. So I'm away about 18 meters. These are, the units in Houdini are meters. So I can use that for my distance. So I want it to be about 18 meters. And then the f-stop, we need to have a very small value in here. So if we start with like 0.1, we should see some blurring. There we go. So you can see the foreground is blurring there, but the middle ground is kind of staying in focus. So we'll let that just kind of work. There we go. So we get some depth of field. This is kind of in focus. The foreground is blurry. And you can play around with these values to get, lower this value to get more blur, and change the location of your focal distance. You can also make sure this is none. Come out here. And if I come here and go to pause the render, you can see, I think this now, if we right click and go to, let's find it, focus handle. So you can see that that's my location. That's where you can see that's affecting the focal distance. And then you should have 2 arrows. It seems to be a bit broken. There should be 2 arrows for the f-stop. So if I change this, maybe they're just very small. I don't know. There should be a couple of little arrows there to affect the f-stop as well. So I'm going to set this back to 0.1. In fact, that doesn't matter because I'm not going to render it with the depth of field here. I'm going to do it in the compositing stage. So I'm going to turn off depth of field. Let's go back into the camera. And another thing we might want is motion blur. Another thing we do want is motion blur. So in the camera node, you can see a motion blur is enabled by default already, but it's not working because we've only got the information for this one frame at the moment. So we need a cache node. Just drop that. Still not working, but just change this value to 1 or more, and we should start to see motion blur. There we go. So you can see some blur there coming from the side. Great. So next step, let's look at what we need for rendering for the compositing stage. Okay, so if you go into your image output and AOVs, here we can add into our EXR. So we're going to be rendering out an EXR which can have multiple images within one file. So the beauty will be what we see here, the actual finished image. But I also want, if we come down here to ray level outputs, I want the depth. Okay. and this will give me a grayscale image that I can use to apply depth of field in my compositing package in Nuke in my case, right? So that's pretty much it. Resolution, let's set up, I'm going to do this in 1080. You can do whatever you want. Obviously, the higher the resolution, the more time it's going to take. Limits, that's fine as it is. I'm going to raise the samples to 16, but leave the denoising turned on. And let's give ourselves a frame range. So this will render 1 frame. We need a frame range, so I'm going to do 1 to 100. Excuse me, 1 to 100 is great. And the location, so this will, I believe it should make a folder for us in our HIP file, in our HIP location, which we already have, yeah. Okay, so make sure, if you come here, just to double check, we've got a folder called render, and in that folder it will take $HIP name, so that's the name of your project. You can keep that or not. $OS is the name of the node, so it will call this file Karma1, which we don't want. So I'm going to change that. So I'm going to keep $F4, which is the frame number. EXR is the file type, which is fine. I'm going to get rid of that and just call this, let's see, my Houdini render. And let's do that correctly. My Houdini render $F4. So this is important. So if you don't put this variable, $F is the frame number. So that will take 24. If you don't do that, then you'll have you'll be just overwriting the frame. So each time you'll save 1 frame, and then it will move over to the next one, and you'll just overwrite it, and you'll have 1. You need to do this to get a sequence of frames, right? And that's it. Make sure you've got your camera. So we've only got the 1 camera, so we don't need to worry about that too much. I'm going to leave the motion blur turned on. 16 samples for me. That should render in about 2 minutes. You can see that it's still rendering. And well, roughly 2 minutes, and then we'll have that in Nuke in a moment. So once that's done, render to disk. And you'll see this progress bar pop up. Hey guys, I just want to interrupt this. So you can see that I'm on the first frame and it's taken 5 minutes. So I'm going to interrupt that. Come here, and I didn't want to use 16. I want to use just 6 samples in my case. Okay, so that should go much quicker now. Let me just come here and go to pause that render, and then we'll render that to disk.